if we do the actually, I don't know if it still is traditional, but when I was doing my management consulting 101 course, you used to have actually 102, because 101 was about billable hours, but 102 was, remember, PEST, political, economic, social, technical, and you do this analysis. If we kind of think about it in that sort of old-fashioned way, and we start at the technological level, I would say that there are some huge implications, because if central bank digital currencies are created as specific systems, one-offs, for those purposes, that has one set of implications. But I have a suspicion that a better way forward in the longer term might be to implement, as you know, and I think you probably think a similar thing too, much more generalized digital asset trading systems, of which central bank digital currencies are one kind, but they're far from the only kind. So I'm sort of imagining that digital currencies will be in this much wider spectrum of digital assets that are traded. That's my first point. So it isn't just substitution of digital dollars for dollars, it's substitution of a whole variety of tokenized assets, baskets of tokenized assets, for what would otherwise be currency transactions. So I think the substitution issues are more complicated, but also more interesting than they seem at first glance. At the second level, if you then go up to the sort of social level, I agree strongly with what the governor said about, if you're designing these things for the real world and not for a bunch of MIT graduate students on a campus somewhere, you have some very different architectural bounds, including financial inclusion, which in itself has absolutely nothing to do with digital currency. The decision to allow reduced KYC on Bahamian sanddollar low value wallets is irrespective of the technology that's used for the underlying value transfer. And actually, I don't know how the governor feels about this, but actually what I think about that, and to some extent what any of you think about that, is all quite irrelevant, because it's what FATF think about it, which is ultimately the issue there. So although we want to design central bank digital currencies to support inclusion, by themselves they can't do anything about inclusion, because inclusion is an identity problem, not a money problem. Up at the economic level, without going over the ground that Tommaso set out so excellently well, and without touching on the issues that the governor covered so perfectly, I would say that at the economic level, I tend towards the Bank of England, and it's not just because I'm English. I think the Bank of England has done some excellent work on all of this sort of thing. I mean, I know it's sort of funny that it's the Bank of England, we're supposed to be British, whatever, but anyway, the Bank of England, if you read their excellent work on this, they broadly say, so as the governor was saying, on the one hand, you want digital currency to reduce the overall costs of intermediation within the economy and allow transactions to flourish where they couldn't otherwise have taken place. And also, actually, as the governor points out, I want to come back to this point in a minute, in the presence of natural disasters and the lack of networks. I buy all of that. But I also agree with the sort of Bank of England perspective, which is that the upsides, which are less tangible, are much greater. So in other words, creating a platform for innovation and economic growth is, in a developed economy, which the UK used to be, by the way, in the old days, in a developed economy, this is much more important. So creating a platform that allows for innovation and growth and so on is more important than shaving a small amount. I mean, basically, if you live in the UK, you can already send money to anybody else instantly and for free. And we've been able to do that for years through the instant payments network. It's not, it's not that interesting. But what that doesn't have, to put it one way, is an API, or to put it another way, and to annoy most of the people that are watching at Coindesk, smart. They're not really smart. Contracts. They're not really contracts, but we'll get past that. So I want a CBDC that is a platform for innovation and economic growth. The Bank of England report, I can't remember the figure off the top of my head, it is in my book, but I think they said if they replace some proportion, not even all of the cash, if they replace some proportion of cash with digital currency, you're looking at a permanent GDP boost of 3 to 4%, which we really need. We really need some GDP boost at the moment. So, so that's an important characteristic. But the most important aspect, and obviously I've saved that for last, for dramatic effect, is at the political level. And I know all of us, don't want to tread on difficult ground here, and I'm not making a political point one way or the other, but I am just flagging up that you can't pretend that digital currencies don't have a political component, because they do. In the US, the majority of US dollars are not in the US and frankly unlikely to ever be repatriated, not just because of the dollarization of economies, but because of crime, money laundering, terrorism, and everything else that people use US dollars for. I mean, the fact that there are more $100 bills in circulation than $1 bills, I think tells you something about the primary use of Federal Reserve currency. But it's also a kind of soft power. And in a world where, I can't remember the figure, but I'm sure Tommaso knows it, is it 80% of all global transactions have at least one leg cleared through US dollars, which means basically cleared through New York banks. The US is able to exert significant soft power. In fact, The Economist, which is not noted for a radical state, The Economist called it financial carpet bombing, which I think is quite an interesting description. So even a small reduction in the use of US dollars in favor of some other central bank digital currencies. And remember, some of those other central bank digital currencies might be optimized for things that are different to what the US dollar is being optimized for. For example, sanctions evasion. That has really big implications. And I'm uncomfortable talking about them because I'm not a politician and I don't know what the answer is. But I'm uncomfortable seeing them nudged out of the discussion because there is a kind of elephant in the room. We can talk up Bitcoin a storm, but if the US government tomorrow outlawed Bitcoin, that would be the end of it. There are political contexts to these things, and I think we have to at least touch on, if we're trying to give people a rounded picture of what's going on. I do think we have to touch on those, even though I'm frankly not qualified to opine on the solutions, and I don't know who is. So there you go. So technology, I'm in favor of doing something great, not just making a sort of kind of M-Pesa but run by the central bank. Socially, I'm all in favor of inclusion, but it's got nothing to do with digital currency. That's to do with other KYC, AML, CTF, PEP issues. Economic, I think we should be designing digital currencies for economic growth, not for cost reduction. And at the political level, I have no idea what any of the answers are, but I at least know what a few of the questions are.